pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your work in the committees. You guys are working hard, and I am so grateful. I want to thank everyone in DLS, the clerk's office, the troopers, the amendment office, the committee staff, everyone for all the work you're doing for us. Truly grateful. The prayer today will be offered by the amazing delegate from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Colleagues, yesterday was West Point's Founders Day, so in honor, I invite you all to join me in the cadet prayer. O God, our Father, thou searcher of human hearts, help us to draw near to thee in sincerity and truth. May our religion be filled with gladness, and may our worship of thee be natural. Strengthen and increase our admiration for honest dealing and clean thinking, and suffer not our hatred of hypocrisy and pretense ever to diminish. Encourage us in our endeavor to live above the common level of life. Make us to choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong, and never to be content with a half-truth when the whole can be one. Endow us with courage that is born of loyalty to all that is noble and worthy, that scorns to compromise with vice and injustice, and knows no fear when truth and right are in jeopardy. Guard us against flippancy and irreverence in the sacred things of life. Grant us new ties of friendship and new opportunities of service. Kindle our hearts in fellowship with those of a cheerful countenance, and soften our hearts with sympathy for those who sorrow and suffer. Help us to maintain the honor of the core untarnished and unsullied, and to show forth in our lives the ideals of West Point in doing our duty to thee and to our country. All of which we ask in the name of the great friend and master of all. Amen.
Amen. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Don't worry, you have 1 second. Give you a few seconds to make it. Everyone from the back. Yeah? Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk would take the call. There being 129 members present, the House is now in session. The clerk will read the journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, March the 2nd, 2026.
All right. Recognizing the Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So much be considered, the reading of the journal.
So order petitions, memorials, and other papers. We have, for those of you that want to look it up, the report of the Committee on Economic Matters, report number 8. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 238, Maryland Heritage Area Authority and Heritage Areas Alterations, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 543, Real Property Landlord and Tenant Family Child Care Homes, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? I saw two people. Okay. The first person I saw is the gentleman from the Eastern Shore, and then the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. I've been looking at the bill, and I'm going to ask if you could special order this for the for time tomorrow. I'd like to, for the purpose of amendment.
Recognizing the floor leader.
No, we won't special order it till tomorrow.
Did she say?
So there's no interest in special ordering. Do you have? Oh, 1 second. All in favor signify by saying aye. The noes? No. Opposed, no. All right, we'll do a roll call.
Madam Speaker?
Madam Speaker, to explain my vote.
Yes, recognizing, was that the minority leader?
Thank you.
Yes.
I would appreciate if the members of the committee would reconsider their decision. This is a bill that is appearing for the first time on the floor of the Maryland House of Delegates, 6 days before the crossover date that requires any kind of timeliness with respect to its ultimate passage. A member of the House of Delegates, who is a good member, who operates in good faith, has requested to offer a potential amendment and special order the bill for 1 day while we sit here on our second session of today. And I would hope that the committee would reconsider the decision to allow members of this body to participate in the debate through offering of amendment. That is fair, that is reasonable, and that is right. And I have found in my experience here, that's what we do. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Madam
welcome.
Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
To explain my vote, this bill was as verbatim passed this chamber 111 to 9 last year, exactly in this structure. Many of the people who were asking to hold this bill voted in favor of it last year, and given the time frame, I support the committee's decision not to special order it.
Madam Speaker.
I'm going to recognize the first person I saw. It was a gentleman to my left from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
welcome.
To explain my vote, this bill was heard last year. It was in a different committee. It's in a different committee this year. We're listening to the bill. This bill is a mandate that if you own a property, you must allow a daycare center in that property, irregardless of anything, any insurance and any other liability. I encourage the body to support the layover. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Okay, I am going to recognize the gentleman from the Eastern Shore that I saw next.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a member of Economic Matters Committee, and for 12 years, I can't remember an example of what's happening here right now. Well, let me just say, the prior speaker is right. Housing policy is now in a different committee, and if it's worth mentioning, the fact that at some point last year, this bill heads to the Senate and has some difficulties. Well, those difficulties were chronicled during the vote that we had in committee during the bill hearing. And yes, Madam Speaker, there should be good and reasonable debate and amendments. There's really no reason to do that. And if the only reason being raised on the House floor is because it got voted out last year, not good enough. It's 2026, not 2025. We have a right to review these legislation, what it means to our citizens, and that's what we're here to do for 90 days. Debate subject. Do our job.
Recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Well, saying me too goes a long way in committee, and to agree with the gentleman from the Eastern Shore, I'd like to say me too. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right. Since there are no other questions, the clerk would take the call. There being 88 votes in the negative and 34 votes in support, the amendment, the motion fails.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, recognizing the gentleman from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Since we denied the motion for a special order, I'd like to ask some questions on the bill.
Second, recognizing the full leader.
Yes.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Explain what the bill does.
Yeah, sure. What the bill does is it recognizing that we have a child care crisis. It seeks to maximize the possibility that anyone who's willing to open up their home, go through all of the MSDE requirements to create a family child care center, which is for 8 children or less, can do that anywhere in the state. And that their landlord, if they're in a rental property, can't prohibit them from doing that.
So let's say you currently rent it out. Let me give you an example. You currently rented out your property to a tenant. You have an active lease. That tenant decides to open a daycare, and the landlord can't say no?
Well, it's prospective, so current leases, it applies going forward, so it wouldn't be in the middle of a lease that's in effect right now.
So the landlord wouldn't have a choice. They have to accept it, or
Not currently.
or tell the tenant to move out.
Well, they wouldn't be able to do that. So in a
So
lease,
the landlord has to accept it. It's a mandate on landlords.
sorry, you want me to answer the question? Okay. So going forward, after this is in effect, a lease that gets signed at that point, a landlord is not able to prohibit a tenant from having a family child care center certified and regulated by the Maryland State Department of Education in that home.
So at that point, depending on the type of property that was leased, I'm sure it just falls under residential. Couldn't the landlord experience, I don't know, a lot of financial risk by having a daycare operate in his property, and he never thought that he might have a daycare in his property?
Yeah, no, it's a really valid question, and that's addressed in the bill. So first of all of the risk associated with the daycare goes to the proprietor of the daycare. There's a really comprehensive and a certification process with MSDE that includes both risk and safety of children, insurance requirements, all those kinds of things. There's also requirements in terms of the number of children you can put into a space based on the size of the space that's there, based on whether it's infants or toddlers or children, elementary school children. So all of that is regulated by MSDE, and all of that puts the risk and the insurance requirements on the proprietor of the child care. The bill requires that the landlord be named on that insurance and allows the landlord to require that the tenant also take out additional insurance in terms of the potential impact to the property. So the risk for anything that happens to the children is not at all on the landlord, is fully on the proprietor, the tenant. But risk to property is covered because it allows the tenant, it allows the landlord to require additional insurance for the property of the tenant.
So does the landlord have the ability at that point, since he's granting and you're mandating that he accepts a daycare facility in his house, does the landlord at that point have the ability to offset his risk by raising rents?
He has the ability to ask for another month of a security deposit, but because he has the ability to ask for additional insurance, potential damage or problems to the property that come from anything that kids do could be covered under that additional insurance.
So, but he can't charge any more money per month. He's locked into the lease, even though he's now. Do we allow tenants to open up any other home-based businesses and the landlord not offset the risk to them?
I think that just coming back to what this bill is doing, this bill is responding to a child care crisis that we've been discussing on this floor, and there's a bunch of different ways that we need to respond to that crisis, and one is to make it as easy as possible for a small business to get started that can serve the need in a community. So the risk issue that you're raising is a valid one, and it's addressed through the fact that MSDE is ensuring that the proprietor is taking on all the risk related to the children, and the risk to the property is covered by the fact that the landlord can require additional insurance.
Yeah, I'm not sure the risk to the property. We'd have to have a disagreement on this. Final question, is there any other states that currently do this? And what, if any, data that you have has that shown to tenants and landlords taking their houses off the market and not renting them?
It's Oregon, New York, and California, and there's no evidence that there's been any problem with that.
Okay, thank you.
Is birthday boy bothering you?
Well, say that again?
Is the birthday boy bothering you?
When it comes to you, absolutely.
That's funny. Thank you for answering those questions. I'll reserve later comments on third reader. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the delegate from the Eastern Shore.
Yeah, will the floor leader rise for a question?
And the gentleman in the back.
Thank you,
He
Madam.
was standing first.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have
You're
an
welcome.
amendment at the desk. It's amendment number 833-6281.
Amendment number 1.
So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
The amendment, the reason why I was asking for a hold is I had very serious concerns with the bill. Took the time to order the amendment. The amendment didn't come back as ordered. It's in regards to allowing a rent increase.
Let's
I'm gonna-
listen, please. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
It's in regard to allowing a rent increase once there's knowledge of a daycare center. The amendment did not come back quite as asked, so I'm going to move to lay over the bill.
Okay. Is the delegate supported?
No.
The delegate is supported. House Bill 543 and the amendment has been laid over for 1 day.
Thank you, Madam
The
Speaker.
clerk will order read the next bill, please.
Household 993, real property, short-term rentals, favorable.
Okay, let's listen. The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title?
Madam
Recognizing
Speaker.
the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could
You're welcome.
the floor leader rise for some questions?
Floor leader.
Good evening.
Hey, good evening. First of all, could you just tell me what this bill does and what problem are we solving with the bill?
So what this bill does is it prevents a municipality or a county from banning short-term rentals to lessees. So you pretty much, if you are leasing a property and you want to offer that property as a short-term rental, the county or municipality cannot ban that practice.
So what's the problem? What initiated to have this bill come forward?
I'm not sure on what yeah, so part of it was there's some local government interference with the short-term rental space, and also just creating more opportunities, economic opportunities for those who are not using their properties when they're not there.
Okay. So if I'm the property owner, I'm the landlord, and I've entered a lease, can I put a do not sublease
Yes, so
clause
this does not prevent the landlord from being able to not allow short-term rentals. All this does is prevent local municipalities from banning it. So if you're a landlord and you have an apartment that you're renting out and you say, hey, under this lease, you cannot short-term lease this as a lessee, you can do that. This just bans the local government from doing it.
Okay, so if the local government requires short-term rentals to be registered, can they still require that to be registered?
The lessee would have to go through the processes of ensuring that they are in accordance with the local government's rules on short-term leasing.
Okay, how about if an HOA prohibits a short-term rental happening in their community?
So this does not apply to HOAs, this applies to local government. So if a HOA has any accordance or laws on that, then the HOA's local laws, this does not impact their ability to do what they do.
Okay. Madam Speaker, could I ask for special order of this bill for the purposes of a potential amendment till session tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow. Thank you. If you could please share that amendment with me as soon as possible.
Thank you very much.
So the question before the House is to special order House Bill 993. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 993 has been special order until the appropriate time tomorrow. Clerk will read the next bill, please.
Household 1008, fiduciary institutions, exploitation of seniors and vulnerable adults, protections and required referral, Vulnerable Adult Banking Protection Act, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
Household 1049, credit unions, mergers and consolidations, alteration of voting requirement, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title?
Madam Speaker,
Yes, recognizing the gentleman from Southern Maryland.
could the sponsor of the bill please rise for a couple questions? Oh, never mind. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
Household 1172, Howard County Economic Development Authority, alterations, favorable.
Okay. The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1355, Financial Institutions Payment Stablecoin Services Establishment and Regulation, Maryland Stablecoin Act. Favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. Okay. The clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1473, Economic Development, Maryland's Future Board Establishment. Favorable.
The question before the I know. The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is printed for third reading. Okay. Okay. Speaker Fontaine, you may have to come up here. No, just kidding. Report of the Committee on the Environment and Transportation. Report number 10. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 248, Motor Vehicle Administration, Identification Cards, Licenses, and Permits, Repeal of Color Photograph Requirement. Favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 251, Vehicle Laws, Transfer of Used Vehicles, Repeal of Notarized Bill of Sale Requirement. Favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 254, Supporting Inclusive Community Adaptation Act. Favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 256, Motor Vehicle Speed Monitoring Systems, Safety Corridors, Vulnerable Road User Protection Act of 2026. Favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1116, Howard County Illegal Dumping Surveillance System Pilot Program. Favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Government, Labor, and Elections. Report number 10. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 141, State Personnel Collective Bargaining Graduate Assistance. Favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 388, Baltimore County Public Library Collective Bargaining Supervisory Employees. Favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Appropriations, report number 11. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1530, Higher Education Undocumented Students Out-of-State Tuition Exemption Eligibility. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader, the Vice Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so
You're
much
welcome.
be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
There are two amendments. The first is technical. The second amendment strikes language and changes requirements for undocumented tax returns from 3 years to 2 years. Move the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Hi, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question for the floor leader, please.
Floor leader.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, no, absolutely. You're right. We're in the evening now. Geez. Could you just walk me through what this bill does?
This bill is an extension of what we did and what was passed by the voters back in 2012 to allow undocumented immigrants in this state the opportunity to have in-state tuition and with under certain criteria that I could certainly explain to you. And all this bill does is change one of those conditions, the requirement of evidence of state taxes paid from 3 years to 2 years.
Okay. Would you mind explaining that requirement that you were talking about there that you could explain?
You mean the other requirements? The other requirements are that you had to have had 3 years in a public high school, and you have to, again, demonstrate these tax forms. Those who have to file for the Selective Service must file for the Selective Service, and they also have to sign promise to sign an affidavit that they will seek citizenship as soon as they are first able.
Okay. And is this only for undergraduate, or could this also be used for graduate education as well?
Both.
So how would this apply to, say, like the veterinary program that we have with the University of Virginia? Would that apply to that, since we send students there? Like, would Virginia have to accept this in some way as well? I'm just kind of curious how that would work.
I assume you're referring to the Virginia Tech?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I believe so.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the questions and answers.
All right. Seeing no other question, the bill is auto printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Economic Matters, report number 9. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 149, Fire Prevention, Assistant Fire Marshals, Residential Rental High-Rise Property Fire Safety Equipment, and Fire Alarm Systems Technicians. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Amendment number, sorry. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 requires specific fire safety features in a residential high-rise building that undergo substantial renovations. Directs the State Fire Prevention Commission to adopt regulation of fire alarm system technician companies and establish new approval minimum standard requirements for assistant state fire marshals. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is auto printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 168, Housing and Community Development, Affordable Housing, Educator, Workforce, Housing, and Municipal Corporations. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Amendment number 1 is technical, and amendment number 2 narrows the scope of the bill by striking the low-income housing tax credit provisions. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the delegate from Hartford County.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I'm just wondering if the floor leader could explain to us how this bill works now. I've just pulled up some of the testimony
Floor leader.
from the program. How will
Yeah,
it
so
work?
all the bill really does is it expands the purpose and eligible recipients of the funding from the Housing Innovation Fund, Housing Innovation Pilot Program from DHCD, so we can create more more housing for those in education. Yeah.
Okay, and who's currently eligible right now without this bill?
So it depends on the program. There's all kinds of eligibility. So
I'm sorry, what?
It depends on the type of program. There's several types of ways you can be eligible for the program from DHCD.
Oh, okay, so this is a brand new program that we're creating.
No, it's not a brand new program.
Okay.
DHCD. So there's housing innovation pilot programs. There's programs that we do to designated housing for. So what this does is this allows us to now consider creating more housing opportunities for teachers, because we know that in some communities it's very, very expensive to live, and we want to keep our teachers nearby and want to keep teachers in the state. So this is a goal for us to incorporate teacher housing within DHCD programming.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand who is eligible currently, and I get teachers are going to be
DHCD
added.
does programs for seniors. DHCD does programs for all types of persons who need help with finding housing. So this just opens up housing opportunities for teachers.
Okay, and then is this a grant that they get specifically? Does it help them pay their rent? What does it go to exactly?
So this goes towards the building of the housing.
Oh, actually creating it.
Yeah, creating the housing, correct.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Thank you for answering those questions.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Seeing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 313, landlord and tenant residential housing, rental applications, and tenant screening. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the full leader again.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Moves to which
welcome.
we consider the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 exempts a landlord from liability for determination based on specified shielded records, strikes unfair, abusive, and deceptive trade practice penalties from the bill, and requires a producer of a tenant screening report to indicate the deposition of the unshielded records. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I was reading through the bill, and I was just a little concerned about a couple of things. Could you please explain to me how this is going to work as far as practice?
Floor leader.
Yeah, so the way this bill works, just to be clear, this bill is about the screening process. So this is to ensure that whenever you are applying for living somewhere, that certain records should be shielded. So if there was a situation where someone filed an action against you, but there was no resolution to that action, those types of items should not be included on your record. So if someone filed that you were late for rent a couple times, but we find out that it was because of a mailing mistake and the resolution was never actually produced, you can't use those filings as a form of a reason why you would not admit someone to be considered for an application to live in the space.
All right, the question I have would be if there was a filing for failure to pay rent and the tenant moved out prior to the bill hearing or to going in front of a judge, would that be allowed?
Yeah, there wouldn't be a final determination, so that would not be included, no.
So we could basically have a tenant move in, move out several different times and move out before the failure to pay rent comes to court, am I correct?
If there's no final determination, there's no final determination. You couldn't use that in the screening process, correct?
Okay, can the landlord actually talk to the tenant? I mean, the previous landlord?
I assume so. If that's your part of your application process, yes.
All right, is there any limit to what they can ask?
Yeah, you see it. Yeah, so the purpose of the bill is you can't inquire about shielded records. So you can't inquire about things that are that didn't have a final determination. So we're shielding those records. So you can't ask about shielded items.
Okay. If I could, I'd like to special order this till appropriate time tomorrow, if that would be fine. For purpose of amendment.
For the purpose of amendment, if you can please provide that amendment before tomorrow's session, I would greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, sir.
Madam Speaker?
Yes.
Just in preparing that amendment, can I just add a point? We have already passed as a body the shielding that was just discussed. What this bill does is it makes the job of the companies who put together the application packets, who do that screening, they have to follow the law that we already passed. So this body has already decided that if a tenant doesn't pay and then leaves before a filing happens and then the court date never happens, that already is not allowed to be used. This bill just catches up the screening companies to have to follow the same laws as landlords currently have to follow. So I just want to make sure that's clear in any amendments that people are coming up with.
So the question before the House is to special order House Bill 313. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 313 has been special order until the appropriate time tomorrow. Please make sure to work with the committee any amendments or questions you may have. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 315, Human Relations, Discrimination in Housing, Income-Based Housing Subsidies. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Move to be
welcome.
considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Amendment requires a confirmation of a specified period where an adverse credit history arose and clarifies that a landlord may require income verification for the portion of rent not covered by an income-based housing subsidy. Move the amendments.
So the question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the lady from Hartford County.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So I'm just trying to make sure I understand this bill as amended. Could you just walk me through, as a landlord, how the process has changed for me?
Yeah, so we already have passed, and it's federal law in here in the state of Maryland, you cannot discriminate based on where people get their income from. So what this bill essentially does is it ensures that if someone has a new subsidy that they have to get support, you can't use credit history before that subsidy in the evaluation of whether or not you want to bring them on as a tenant. So let's say, or their income, yeah, correct.
Okay, so for example, if I require a credit check right now, I have to wait to do that till after I know their source of income, or?
So you can, yeah, so you can do the credit check, but you can only do a credit check based on the time period since they've had this new subsidy. So you couldn't do a credit check so let's say they had a subsidy for the past 5 years. You couldn't do a credit check from 6 years ago before they got the subsidy because their financial situation has changed.
Well, I don't think that's not really how credit checks work. You don't pick a year in the past. That's right. Am I confused about something? You can't. I couldn't go to 2020 and pull somebody's credit report. It's a current credit report, always, to my knowledge.
Right, so it's the credit history. So,
okay, so I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so
you can't use the credit history from prior to the subsidy because now they have a subsidy, so their financial situation has changed.
Okay, so you're saying if they had missed payments or whatever back before they had gotten this, then I couldn't include the fact that they had not paid rent for a decade, but then they got this subsidy and all of a sudden last month they got it, now they've paid rent once. That's the only thing I'm allowed to look at. So I could not deny somebody potentially that had a very long history of not paying their rent, and then they got this subsidy, and now I can only consider them from this point of where they got the subsidy going forward.
It's only, so can you give me that example again? I'm not really sure I'm following here.
So you could have an individual, for example, who just recently received this subsidy. Let's say they got it in the last 6 months, and they've paid on time in the last 6 months. But if you looked before those 6 months, we will now no longer be able to look back and say, oh, but they had 10 years of not paying, of being very inconsistent with their payments. But I'm not permitted to look at that now. I can only use the last 6 months. That's what this bill essentially does.
That's for their income. Yes, for their income verification purposes, yes.
Okay, so for income verification purposes only, can I consider? Well, that doesn't really make any sense at all either. Then, I mean, if I'm considering denying somebody based on their credit history, am I yes or no permitted to look prior to them getting the subsidy and see before they got the subsidy, let's say they got it 6 months ago, can I consider the information that they may have not paid on time prior to when they attained the subsidy, just in terms of their, maybe not their income, but their consistency in payment? Can I use that?
So you asked like 3 things there, so I'm really confused right now. So you're saying, what are you asking for? What can you look at and look back at? So you're saying that you can't look at, what are you asking exactly?
So I'm saying if there's an individual who just got the subsidy and they've paid on time maybe for 6 months, but I can see in their credit history that they have everything before the 6 month is not a good look. They have not been consistent in their payments. Will I, after this bill passes, still be permitted to consider that as a factor in denying their application? Not related to income verification, just related to their inconsistency with paying on time previous bills.
One moment.
No problem. I want us to get it right, so take your time.
I agree.
Yeah.
So for the technical question, I'm going to turn to the bill sponsor who worked really hard on this bill. 1 second.
Awesome.
Great to see you again.
Hi.
Recognizing the bill sponsor.
Thank you. Sorry, Madam Speaker.
It's okay.
Thank you. So
Welcome.
we have worked tirelessly through the amendments on this bill with the help of the subcommittee chair, who also did a great job with the landlords to get MMHA, for example, to drop their opposition. And the way that we did that is to lay out very cleanly that landlords under this bill can still evaluate information that's relevant to whether a tenant can pay rent, but they can no longer take into account things that are not predictive or irrelevant. So to your point about whether landlords can still consider whether the tenant paid rent or not, absolutely. At any juncture under this bill, we want landlords to know if tenants failed to pay their rent in the past. Of course.
Okay.
We're not that zany. You know, I know you guys
That's
think
the
that
bill for
sometimes-
next year, y'all.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. If you want to co-sponsor, I have an
Certainly
opportunity.
not,
Okay.
but I'm sure I'll fight it on the floor.
So what this bill says
Yeah.
is that if essentially the day you get the voucher is almost like a golden ticket for folks, right? Voucher holders, a lot of times by definition, are people who struggle financially. And sometimes these wait lists last 10 years. And they
Yes.
wait and they wait and they wait. And when they finally get one of those voucher tickers, voucher tickets, it's almost like a golden ticket like on Willy Wonka. And for them, their financial situations change markedly, usually.
Correct,
So
right.
what this bill says is that landlords should absolutely be able to check whether a tenant broke things, whether a tenant was evicted, whether a tenant had failure to pay rent, filings against them, whether they didn't pay. They should still be able to check references from current and past landlords to see if this was a bad tenant. All this bill says narrowly is if a landlord knows the date of when the person got the voucher, then they should not be able to look at adverse credit information, not rental history. But
Okay.
whether they miss payments outside of the context of the landlord-tenant relationship from prior to the voucher. And that's just because we know that those are not actually predictive of whether a tenant's going to pay rent. A tenant not paying rent in the past, highly predictive of whether or not they're not going to pay rent in the future. Whether they didn't pay their credit card bill, as the subcommittee chair said, 6 years ago, way prior to when they got their voucher, much less predictive. And the reason the bill is here is because the legislature did a lot of good work a couple of years ago and passed the Home Act, which was actually sponsored by the now comptroller. But what we found, unfortunately, is that a very small minority of landlords have found a couple of loopholes around the Home Act. And this addresses a couple of those loopholes.
Okay, so anything that would show up, like other types of missed payments, I mean, like if somebody had a home foreclosed on, that would show up on their credit report. But you're saying the only way I could consider that evidence of not paying would be if there was some legal process they went through, essentially if it was in case search.
Right. They can still look at the adverse credit information from after the voucher, because we think generally if someone got a voucher a year ago and they've paid all their bills on time after they got the voucher, but they struggled to pay their bills before they got that golden ticket, and the landlord denies them, we think that's probably a pretext for source of income discrimination.
I can hear that, except sometimes people have when they just get it, they're applying, so we don't really have any history to look at then. Do you know what I mean? Like if you just get it, you're going to go out and apply for a home immediately, and now we can't look at even last month or the month before or 2 months before.
I totally get what you're saying, but you have to remember the context we're talking about. These are folks who the federal government is paying 80, 90, 100% of their rent. So their portion is not only small, but it's already been determined by HUD that they can afford it. HUD has already vetted these people and determined based on their income and a lot of times their history that they can afford a specific dollar amount. So we're still letting landlords income verify. We're still letting them make sure that they make enough for their portion of the rent. And we're still making sure that they can check references, check case search, check their tenant screening report. We're just saying that this stuff that's old and generally is not predictive anyway about whether they're going to be a good tenant or not should not be used. Because what we found, and in conversations with landlords, what we found is the landlords that are using that old non-predictive data are not doing it because they're trying to be predictive. They're doing it because they're trying to dodge a law that we passed a couple of years ago.
Probably a lie opposed. I'm just throwing that out there. But I really appreciate you answering my questions in detail. It does help me think about it. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Question
welcome.
either for the floor leader or bill sponsor.
Yes, sir.
Sir, could you walk me through in the amendment, or in the reprint, sorry, it's talking about an income ratio. Can you just like kind of describe to me what that's getting at there? What is there a standard ratio? Could there be different ratios for landlords?
Can you point to the line?
Sure. It's page 3.
You on the reprint or the actual amendment?
At the bottom. I'm on the reprint. Sorry.
But I think I can answer your question. I think you can look at the ratio that doesn't apply to the subsidy. So what that means is that you can look at, if they have a subsidy, you can look at that ratio with the money that they're paying outside of the subsidy. So you can't use the portion not covered, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and thank you for that. No, I wasn't asking about that. What I'm asking is there a standardized ratio, or is this different per landlord? Like, is there anything it's set into law already or into regulation somewhere about these ratios, or can this be subjective on a case-by-case basis for?
Yeah, I think it's case-by-case based on the amount that the person is being subsidized by.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other question, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 618, Commercial Law, Self-Service Storage Facilities, Alterations. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2
Hold on a second.
Amendment number 1.
Hold, give me 1 minute, please. We were still on 618. Do you have, the gentleman have 618, or do you have the next one, 622?
618, Madam Speaker.
Okay. So recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 establishes additional notifications and disclosure requirements and changes the effective date to 1 July. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 622, Cannabis Licensees, Micro Dispensary Employees, and Cannabis Agent Training Programs. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Let's listen, please.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 amends the training requirement, alters the delivery sunset, and clarifies certain titles. Move the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 956, Condominiums, Buildings More Than 40 Years Old Study. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
The amendment requires the study to collect specified average data points for unit owners. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1180, State Board of Architects, Grounds for Discipline, Requirements. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So
Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment 1 is technical. Amendment 2 conforms the House bill to the Senate bill as it passed out of the Senate. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Cecil County.
Yes, I just had a question on the bill.
The floor leader, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, we had an incident in Cecil County, and I've heard of this in other trades as well, whereas we had someone who was posing as an architect. However, they did not carry the credential. It was found well after that they had received funds, and this was tied to a bonding initiative. What would happen in an instance like that?
So this bill makes it stricter in instances like this. In the past, the current law says the Board of Architects may take certain disciplinary actions like a reprimand, revoke, suspend their licenses, etc. This bill says they must. They are required to revoke their licenses if they are found guilty of certain fraud or misconduct, as you mentioned.
And
Yeah.
would it preclude them from gaining the licensure in the future?
It will depend because there's also a fine, you know. So if they are revoked, then they cannot be licensed again.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Seeing no other additional questions or amendments, the bill is printed for third reading. Your clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1346, State Department of Assessments and Taxation, expedited document processing and fees. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 eliminates a certain tier, requires a certain pre-clearance, and alters the effective date. Please move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the gentleman from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Just
welcome.
a really appreciate it. Just a really quick question. I saw there's a fee in here. It says an expedited fee, and I was reading the reprint. Is that still in there?
The floor leader.
All right, so what the bill does, it allows for businesses to request that certain services, transactions that they have to do with the State Department of Taxation be done faster. So they pay for that expedited fee. If they don't want to pay for that expedited fee, it'll just be done in the regular time frame.
What's the regular time frame?
So that depends on some of the filings, but what this is doing, if there's some certain time-sensitive filings that you want to do, and if you want them back in one day, you want a response back in one day, you pay that extra fee instead of waiting 2 to 3 days. I'm not sure how long it takes, but it's roughly around a couple of days.
So it's $1,000?
Well, that depends on how quickly you want it back. So what we allow for is one-day transactions, one-day transactions. It used to be 30 minutes. They moved it just to be one-day transactions. And again, this is for businesses who want to do a transaction very quickly. They mention things like mergers and acquisitions, some certain stock transactions. So time is money, and so that means a lot to them if they want it back quicker.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Seeing no other question, the bill is printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1395, Consumer Protection, Agricultural Equipment, Warranties. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the full leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Move so
welcome.
much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
The amendment removes a conflicting statute of limitation and lowers the amount of damages that may be awarded. Please move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Environment and Transportation, report number 11. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 247, Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal Bays Critical Area Protection Program, variances, alterations. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much. Consider the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As
You're
amended,
welcome.
the departmental bill alters certain standards and requirements for variances from land use requirements under the Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal Bays Critical Area Protection Program. Subcommittee amendment clarified that the alteration of variance standards under the bill do not apply to accessory dwelling units. Move the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 250, Environment, Water Resources, and Wetlands Enforcement. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Short bill summary. As amended, this department bill authorizes MDE to impose an administrative penalty for a violation of provisions of the Environment article relating to the appropriation or use of waters, reservoirs, and dams. The bill also expands MDE's authorization to use administrative orders for violation related to waterway construction and dam safety and standardizes related administrative notice and hearing procedures. Amendment 1 makes technical changes. Amendment 2 requires MDE to take certain steps before imposing an administrative penalty on certain categories of dam owners or water infrastructure asset owners, and to consider the violator's degree of cooperation with MDE and any good faith efforts to address a violation when imposing administrative penalties under the bill. The amendment also strikes language that would have authorized MDE to impose administrative penalties for certain wetland violations.
Move the amendment. Oh.
Move the amendment.
Okay, so the question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
My pleasure.
Would the committee be willing to allow for a special order for the purpose of amendment?
Sure.
The question before the House is to special order House Bill 250. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 250 has been special order until the appropriate time tomorrow. If you have any questions or amendments, please provide to the committee as soon as possible. Thank you. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 668, St. Mary's County, Prohibition on Standing in Inherently Dangerous Highway. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the gentleman from Southern Maryland, who's the floor leader.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening.
Be so much considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment number 1 requires a determination that the state highway is inherently dangerous be made in consultation with SHA. Amendment number 2 requires SHA approval for signage on state highways. Move the amendments, please.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 947, Department of Natural Resources, Commercial Blue and Flathead Catfish, Finfish, Trout Line License Alterations. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader, the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So order.
As amended, House Bill 947, an emergency bill, creates a blue catfish gill net program under DNR as an element of the invasive blue catfish pilot program. The committee amendments are strike the authorizations under blue and flathead, catfish, finfish, trot line license. Move the committee amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the committee amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1071, Environment, Stormwater Management, Agricultural Land. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader, the gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move
You're
so
welcome.
much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment number 1 is technical, and amendment number 2 requires stormwater management regulations adopted by MDE to account for agritourism and adds language specific for Montgomery County. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1081, Maryland Transit Administration Reform Act. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the committee, who's the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much
You're
to
welcome.
consider the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Thank you. The amendments narrow the change to Maryland Transit Administration's procurement authority, more closely match that of the State Highway Administration, alter the membership and conflict of interest standards for the Baltimore Core Transit Services Board, clarify the construction of limited liability provisions applicable to the Maryland Transit Administration, and clarify the agency's quick take authority. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended.
Madam Speaker.
May I finish?
Sorry. Yep.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was
You're
just
welcome.
going to request if the floor leader would special order this till tomorrow's session.
She says I should say yes, so we can accept the special order till tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
That's a good team there. The question before the House is to special order House Bill 1081. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1081 has been special order until the appropriate time tomorrow. On all these bills that are being special order or layover, will you be so kind, please, and talk to the committees if you have any questions or possible amendments? The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1113, Vehicle Laws, Bus Obstruction Monitoring Systems, and Bus Stop Zones. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move so much be considered the reading of the
So
amendments.
order.
As amended, House Bill 1113 prohibits a person from stopping, standing, or parking a vehicle in a bus stop zone and makes the violation subject to enforcement through a bus obstruction monitoring system. The First Amendment defines bus stop zone, and the second strikes the exceptions to the prohibition. Move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If
You're
I
welcome.
could just ask the floor leader a couple clarifying
Floor leader.
questions.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Good evening. Stopping, standing, parking, does that only apply to vehicles or does it apply to any other scenario?
Great question. Thank you for the question. Stopping, standing, and parking refer to motor vehicles, and there are provisions in existing law that allow other vehicles such as bicycles, motorized vehicles that are in the right turning lane, they're exempted.
So bicycles are exempted?
A bicycle that's moving is exempted if it's in the turning, if it's turning.
So I probably shouldn't ask it, but I'm going to ask it. So if I don't own a car, like, does this apply to if I stand in the bus lane or no?
You physically with your human body?
Yes.
The bill didn't consider that eventuality. Did you have a recommendation?
I mean, I don't know how many special orders the speaker's going to approve here, but no, I genuinely was just curious because it does, the way it's written, it does seem like it would apply to standing, you know, I mean, the way it seems like it may not apply to just vehicles, it just could. So that's why I was asking the clarifying question that, and it's a legit one. For example, if you leave like a bird, you know, one of those little electric scooters, or you leave a Peloton or whatever, or if you're just standing in the bus lane, does this bill apply to that? And was that the intent for it to apply? If it doesn't,
Let's listen, please.
Yeah, so.
Thank you.
So thanks for your thoughtfulness.
Yeah.
And I know this is what attorneys do. They sort of envision hypotheticals. But the bill is actually really simple. What the bill contemplated was prohibiting stopping, standing, and parking of motorized vehicles in a bus stop zone. Why is that important? Because interfering with the movement of a bus, whether it's stopping and letting passengers on or off, or moving in or out of that bus stop zone, that is a material impact on bus service, on the safety of passengers, as well as other users of the road. So it contemplated simply preventing obstruction of the bus stop zone.
So we're only penalizing people that own cars?
Under this bill, yes, because vehicles are the subject of actions that block bus stop zones.
Okay. Thank you for answering those questions. So, Madam Speaker, with that, I don't know if the committee would be opposed to the purpose of special order for tomorrow. Appropriate time, we'll give you the amendment ahead in advance, and we can go from there.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
We would love to take your special order till the appropriate time tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
We are so kind today. That may change in the next few days. Okay, the question before the House is to special order House Bill 1113. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1113 has been special order until the appropriate time tomorrow. Report of the Committee on Government, Labor, and Elections. Report number 13. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 166, Public Health, Henrietta Lacks Commission Establishment, Henrietta Lacks Commission on Maryland Act of 2026. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
There are two amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical, and amendment number 2 removes the bioethics responsibilities to focus the commission on maintaining a list of tributes to Henrietta Lacks, encouraging tourism, advertising to feature those tributes, and promoted economic development in Turner Station, where Henrietta Lacks lived. Please move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 861, Department of Information Technology, Statewide Information Technology Master Plan, reporting. Favor of amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 requires the IT master plan to be submitted to the General Assembly, changes the deadline when the updated plan needs to be uploaded and submitted, and requires the Secretary annually to brief the General Assembly on the plan. Madam Speaker, I move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 941, Public Health, Public Buildings, Hygiene Products. Favor of amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
so
welcome.
much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
There's one amendment. The amendment provides that public bathroom does not include a facility that's just a composting toilet or a pit toilet. I move the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the lady from Hartford County.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Lots of interesting bills today. Could the floor leader tell me, does this apply to like restrooms, for example, in public parks, things like that?
Floor leader?
It does not apply to a porta potty. It would apply to a facility within a building.
Okay, so like my parks in my community have like this, like a little concrete area that's got a bathroom, 2 bathrooms in it. So would it apply in that situation? It's not like a giant building. It's just a restroom facility on the site.
Yeah, according to the definition of a public building in the legislation, that would not be included.
Okay. So it would be like here or a county municipal building or something along those lines, but not a bathroom in a park or a.
That's
okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, recognizing the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Will the floor leader please stay risen, or rose, or a rose, or whatever he has. Whatever you want to do, I'd just like you to be up with me. Okay?
The floor leader is up.
Thank you. Just a quick, I was just reading something about the state police. I'm looking at the numbers they have and what they're going to have to do in each facility. Who's responsible for filling them and refilling them?
Where is that in the?
In the state police, it was in their, actually in their testimony when they were against the bill. State police, shoot, I just had it up. It's in the state police, state of Maryland Department of State Police. It's in their testimony. They're talking about the estimated fiscal impact, and it's talking about the putting the equipment in, filling the things. Who's doing all that?
That would be their custodial staff.
That comes under, they don't have to worry about, we're not using state policemen for that?
No, I wouldn't. Well, who cleans their bathroom now?
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the floor leader
Yes.
while he's up? Okay, the lady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Reading the bill on page 1, lines 19 to 21. Menstrual hygiene products means appropriately sized tampons. What are appropriately sized tampons? I've never heard of such a thing. What do you consider appropriate?
It just means that tampons are offered. There's no specific size.
Well, apparently there's 4 different sizes, so which one would you like them to use?
Just a regular sized tampon in the bathroom.
Okay, maybe it should say that and not appropriately sized tampon. Now, is this going in all bathrooms, men's
Yes.
and women's?
Yes.
How about the Ravens Stadium?
If it is a state-owned building, then yes, it would go in. It's a public building.
Oriole Park?
Well, if it applies to the Raven Stadium, it would also apply to Orioles Park.
I guess Pimlico? Anything?
Those are not government buildings.
Well, then but you said probably Ravens Stadium. Owned by the Stadium Authority. Okay.
I said if it's a state building.
So not Ravens Stadium.
If Raven Stadium is a state building, then yes, it would apply.
Okay, so it's owned by the Stadium Authority. Is that correct?
Yes, but
So
it's
that-
operated by a private entity.
But if it's owned by, I'll ask you that question on third reader. If you could
Okay.
get that answer for me. Thank you. And did you entertain an amendment to only put this in women's bathrooms?
That was not, an amendment like that was not offered.
Thank you.
Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you. To my friend from Frederick. So only because she brought it up, would we have to put these in the men's bathroom back here?
Yes, this is a public bathroom in a state building.
Oh, okay. I'll just have to figure out what size to use. But thank you for answering that question.
Okay.
Okay, then, let's not go there. Any other questions? Seeing none, the bill is order printed running quickly to third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1300, Maryland Commission for Women Alterations. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
All right, recognizing the floor leader, the woman from Prince George's County.
Good evening, Madam Speaker. Good evening, colleagues. So this bill alters the duties of the Maryland Commission for Women. The bill removes the requirement that the executive director of the commission be appointed by the Secretary of Human Services and instead specifies that the executive director is not considered a special appointee. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 specifies that the executive director is a member of the skilled service in the state personnel management system and revises some of the responsibilities of the commission. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1352, State Procurement Worker Residency Requirements. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader. You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Amendment 1 is technical. Amendment 2 strikes the debarment penalty for compliance. Madam Speaker, move the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Recognizing the lady from Hartford County.
Thank you so much, Madam
You're
Speaker.
welcome.
Could the floor leader just explain to me now what the bill does with the new amendment? Like, what is the difference between the way the process is currently being done and what are we changing exactly?
Floor leader.
Sure, thank you. So I will give you a bill summary, then talk about the amendment 1 and 2. So the bill requires the contractors on specified public works contracts ensure that at least 35% of apprenticeship hours are performed by state residents. The Maryland Department of Labor is responsible for enforcing the bill's requirements, and any costs incurred to administer the bill must be paid from the state apprenticeship and the training fund. Contractors found in violation of the bill requirement are subject to financial penalties, which will be paid to state apprenticeship and the training fund, or to register apprenticeship programs that operate and train apprentices in the state.
Okay, and what is the penalty?
The penalty, you need to pay a fine.
And how much is the fine? And so are we, go ahead and tell me the fine, then I'll ask you.
Twice the rate of apprenticeship hour.
I'm sorry, what?
Twice the rate of apprenticeship hour, which defined by the Department of Labor.
Okay, and how is that changing from the way it is today? Is that an increase?
This is a new requirement, 35%. So you need to have 35 apprenticeship hours.
Okay, so we never had a penalty before for this, and we're creating a new penalty?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other question, the bill is printed for third reading. The clerk will read the report of the Committee on Government, Labor, and Elections, report number 11. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 108, Division of Correction Release Preparation Program. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader, the wonderful lady from Montgomery County.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Madam Speaker, move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 amends the bill and removes the requirement that the Cannabis Regulation and Enforcement Fund provide funds for the administration of the program. Amendment number 3 requires protocol for the Volunteer Services Program to require a minimum the Division of Corrections to maintain a record of volunteers registered in the program, and 2, the registration is made available to the public under certain circumstances. Please move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the lady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam
You're welcome.
Speaker. Could the floor leader rise? I was listening to your reading of the amendments, and the funding source was removed. Who is paying for it now?
It is a volunteer program, so there is no funding needed for it.
Who's going to run the program?
The Department of Corrections.
So they're saying they can do it with existing resources?
That is absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 115, election law, individuals released from state correctional facilities, automatic restoration of voter registration. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader, the gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So
You're
much be
welcome.
considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Thank you. The amendments specify the information that the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services must provide to the State Board of Elections and change the effective date of the bill to January 1st, 2028. Move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the delegate from Hartford County.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
You're
Could the
welcome.
floor leader tell me where are these folks going to be registered?
Absolutely. So when a person leaves their correctional facility, they have to supply an address of where they're moving, so they'll be registered to vote wherever that address is located.
Okay, okay. And so typically they'll go to something like a halfway house or something close by a lot of times. So many of them will end up being registered sort of in the vicinity of where they're released?
I don't really have the data on where they go when they leave. I think we're actually studying that question right now, where people migrate to after they leave their correctional facilities. But generally speaking, people move back in with family, friends. They get their, some people are capable enough to get their own place. And then some people do have to use halfway houses or other support services. So
okay.
It's
All
kind
right.
of spread out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wanted to see if the committee would be open to holding this bill until tomorrow for the purpose of an amendment.
Yeah, we would be open to that.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Motion to hold the bill.
The question before the House is to special order House Bill 115. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. House Bill 115 has been special ordered until the appropriate time tomorrow. Tomorrow looks like it's going to be a long day. All right. The clerk read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1001, election law, local board of elections employees, authority at polling places. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
The amendments authorize the local election director, rather than any local board employee, to keep order in the polling place, and authorize a political committee or person making independent expenditures to designate an accredited challenger or watcher. Please move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1083, Montgomery County Board of Elections membership. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader again.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
One more
welcome.
time. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
The amendments change the effective date of the bill to June 7th, 2027. Please move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1108, Labor and Employment, Greenhouse Workers, Collective Bargaining, and Heat Protection. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Thank you. Amendment
You're
number
welcome.
1 is technical. Amendment number 2 alters the oversight authority from the Secretary of Labor to the Maryland Public Employee Relations Board for the collective bargaining rights, clarifies that an employee under the bill does not include an agricultural retail employee. Move the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the minority leader.
I'll take it.
I'm sorry, minority whip.
Just kidding. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I think he minds.
Whatever. Would you mind rising just a couple questions?
Sure.
So I read the bill, and there's a portion of the bill that deals with workers that are permitted to take breaks if certain temperatures get too hot, but yet the bill seems to only apply to workers who work in a environmentally controlled greenhouse. So if you could help me sync those two things.
Yeah, thank you for the question. These greenhouse workers, they work in environments that are often hot because the heat is controlled for specific plants. And so this does allow them to take a 5-minute break every hour as needed in this high heat.
So, but isn't the temperature controlled? I mean, so for example, I was looking at the average temperature for greenhouses, says it's between 65 and 75 degrees. This bill says if it gets to 90, they take breaks. I mean, it's a controlled environment. So honestly, I didn't know if there are greenhouses in Maryland that are set at 90 degrees and these folks need to take breaks.
If it's under 90 degrees, this wouldn't apply to them. It's heat standards. It's very similar to the heat standards we already have in place for, outdoors. So in Comar, you already, if it's greater than 90 degrees, workers can have to be able to take a 10-minute break every 2 hours. This is just 5 minutes every hour, so it divides it up.
I understand. So the impetus for that portion of the bill was to mirror what's happening if they work outside. Is that correct?
It does essentially mirror it, but it's just to ensure that if the temperature is high enough to be dangerous, because we know high heat can be dangerous to people, that they can take breaks to ensure that they can get a drink of water or ensure that they don't get heat stress.
I got you. So I'll save it for third reader debate, but it's an environmentally controlled environment specifically to be kept under a certain temperature so the crops don't die. But yet we're giving these folks the same protections that someone who would work outside in the summer would have, but these people are literally working in a controlled indoor environment. But I'll save it. I appreciate you answering the questions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Recognizing the lady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Good
welcome.
evening.
Good evening.
I have a number of businesses in our district that are greenhouses, and they've called me with a lot of concerns about this, but in the testimony, and I don't know if your amendments address this, it says that the bill would authorize the Secretary of Labor to create procedures for resolving impasses between parties. Is that still in the bill?
So the authority for the bill has been transferred from the Secretary of Labor to the Public Employee Relations Board.
Ooh. Does that make it take longer? If you
No, the Public Employee Relations Board already does collective bargaining. They supervise collective bargaining, so it fits in with what they do, whereas it would be a new thing for the Secretary of Labor, for the Department of Labor.
Okay, and can you tell me, does any other state in the nation do this?
So there are 12, I believe, other states that authorize collective bargaining rights for agricultural workers. Agricultural workers were exempted from the National Labor Relations Act, which was passed in 1935, so they do not automatically have collective bargaining rights.
I'm sorry, it should have been more clear. This bill, that's more so about not just organizing, but the heat, quote, heat protection. Any other state do this greenhouse heat protection?
Not that we're aware of.
So we'll be first in this interesting idea. We'll have some interesting third reader debate. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the delegate from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to give a quick
welcome.
assist to the subcommittee chair, actually a number of states have heat standards that cover greenhouse workers already. That would include California, Colorado, Minnesota, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington State at the very least. There are a number of other municipalities and counties that have similar standards for heat standards for workers. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Seeing no other questions, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1448, Municipal Elections, Information on Candidates and Voting Procedures and Locations. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader, the gentleman from Carroll County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So much be considered. The reading of the amendments.
So be. So order.
The amendments do the following: alter the deadlines for municipalities to report information to the state board and require reporting of information on special elections and the political party affiliation of candidates. Please move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Health. Report number 13. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 684, Health Insurance, Material Changes to Provider Networks, Notification and Special Enrollment Period. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the lady from Howard, who is the committee floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Move so
welcome.
much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment 1 is technical. Amendment 2 alters the requirements for notifying enrollees regarding the termination of a provider from a provider panel, provides that specified continuity of care provisions apply to providers of behavioral health in addition to providers of primary care, clarifies that balanced billing protections apply to the continuity of care period, requires the commissioner to develop a uniform form for use by carriers, providers, and health systems for requesting continuity of care, strikes language requiring carriers to provide enrollees with advance notice of termination of a contract with a health system, and alters the beginning date for the special enrollment period and the effective date for coverage obtained during the special enrollment period. Please move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 746, Mail-in Medical Assistance Program and Health Insurance Collaborative Care Model Cost Sharing Prohibition. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the vice chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move
You're
so
welcome.
much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 strikes language that would have prohibited carriers from imposing cost-sharing requirements on coverage for services provided in accordance with the collaborative care model, requires certain commercial carriers to provide coverage to services provided in accordance with the collaborative care model, and requires the Maryland Health Care Commission to conduct a study on the impact of prohibiting cost-sharing as proposed under the original bill. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 931, Healthcare Facilities, Nursing Homes, Medical Director Requirements. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the lady from Howard, who is the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Move so much
welcome.
be the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment 2 strikes a provision that would have prohibited a physician from being a designated medical director at more than 2 licensed nursing homes. And Amendment 3 moves from September 30th, 2028 to September 30th, 2030, the date by which designated medical directors are required to obtain certification, and replaces the requirement that the Department of Health maintain a directory of medical directors with the requirement that nursing homes post specified information related to medical directors on the nursing home's website. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1091, Health Insurance and Dental Plan Organizations, Dentist, Assignment of Benefits and Reimbursement of Non-Preferred Providers. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the lady from Baltimore County, who is the floor leader. How are you?
Good, thank you, Madam Speaker. Good evening.
Good evening.
So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
The First Amendment adds sponsors. The Second Amendment makes technical changes. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1112, Health Insurance Coverage Protection Commission Study on Individual and Group Health Insurance Market Stability. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move so much be considered the reading of
So
the
order.
amendments. Amendment number 1 adds sponsors. Amendment number 2 strikes the requirement for an actuarial analysis and requires the Commission to consider whether to adopt a direct payment system for or fee-for-service model for all services covered by Medicaid, and to identify ways to sustain and increase premium assistance in the individual market. Move the amendments, please.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1151, Maryland Department of Health Study on Maryland Medical Assistance Program, Reimbursement of Hospice Room and Board Services. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 requires the Maryland Healthcare Commission and the Maryland Medical Assistance Program to conduct the study rather than the Division of the Healthcare Finance and Medicaid. And it also alters, clarifies, and adds to the study requirements. Move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1280, Supporting Our Caregiver Infrastructure Program Feasibility Study. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 requires the University of Maryland College Park rather than the Office of the Comptroller to conduct the study. Requires the University of Maryland College Park to consult with the Office of the Comptroller on specified items of the study and extends the reporting and termination dates by 1 year. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1365, Health Occupations and Insurance Menopause Provider Training and Coverage Requirements. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move
You're
so much
welcome.
be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 alters the membership of the State Advisory Council on Health and Wellness by adding the Executive Director of the Maryland Commission for Women and 1 expert on menopause. Amendment number 3 clarifies that the treating health care provider will determine the evaluation and management of menopause and its symptoms for purposes of required health insurance coverage, requires the Maryland Commission for Women to evaluate policy initiatives that improve health and economic security of individuals with menopausal conditions, requires Maryland Department of Health to establish an action plan with community health workers to provide access to menopause-related health care services, and to evaluate methods to increase opportunities for clinical training on menopause, and changes the effective date. Please move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1367, Commission on Reimagining Healthcare in Maryland. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and alters the preamble. Amendment number 2 adds to the membership of the Commission a representative with expertise in the practice of advanced practice clinicians. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title?
Madam Speaker?
Yes.
I have a floor amendment, please. It's 953529/1.
Amendment number 1.
This amendment simply replaces the Maryland Health Department with the Maryland Healthcare Commission as the supporting agency for the Commission. Move the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1377, Prescription Drug Repository Program, Redirecting Safe Prescription Drugs Pilot Program. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Move so
welcome.
much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Amendment 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment 2 corrects terminology throughout the bill. Amendment 3 changes the termination date of the bill. Please move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1563, Emergency Room Services and Post-Acute Care Coverage and Facility Studies. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment 1 is technical and adds co-sponsors. Amendment 2 strikes provisions prohibiting denial of covered emergency room services and instead authorizes the insurance commissioner to conduct an examination of a carrier that has issued a pattern of adverse decisions or grievance decisions for a claim or authorized request for services in or related to services in an emergency department. Authorizes the commissioner to have an adverse decision or grievance decision independently reviewed, and adds a requirement that required studies be conducted in consultation with certain stakeholders. Please move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The following report is a report of the Committee on Ways and Means, report number 11. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 96, Baltimore County School Board Nominating Commission Membership Alterations. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment number 1 makes Baltimore County delegation to sponsor the bill. Amendment number 2 corrects a drafting error in the name of the Greater Baltimore Chamber of Commerce. Move the committee amendments, please.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 288, State Superintendent of Schools, prolonged state of emergency, authority to declare. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So much be considered the reading of the amendments,
So
please.
ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 specifies the process by which the state superintendent may declare an emergency and specifies that an emergency can affect one or more schools and provides for a process to terminate the emergency. Move the amendments, please.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 293, Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center, external data sharing with third-party data centers for multi-state reporting, authorization. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
The amendment limits the MLDS Center to entering one data sharing agreement at a time and requires them within 30 days of entering into an agreement and annually thereafter report to the Senate Committee on Education, Energy, and the Environment and the venerable House Ways and Means Committee on the nature of the agreement. Move the amendments, please.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 363, Income Tax Local Child Tax Credit, authorization. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the lady from Montgomery County, who is the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Moves
welcome.
much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
The amendments authorize a county to provide a grant rather than a local income tax credit to recipients of the state child tax credit. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 717, Baltimore City Raffles, organizations affiliated with professional baseball and football teams. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
The amendment extend the termination date of Chapter 372 of 2025 by 3 years. Please move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1148, Property Taxes, Tax Sales, Heirs Protection Program, and Tax Credits. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
The amendments change the name of the program to the Legacy Protection Program, alters the value of homes authorized to participate in the program, authorizes grants to heirs to cover any tax or fee necessary to complete the probate process, and delays the effective date of the program to July 1, 2027. Move the amendments, please, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1247, Prince George's County Tax Increment Financing Extraordinary Development District alterations. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Move
welcome.
much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
The amendments make the bill an emergency bill. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Anyone in the back? Let's give anyone in the back a few minutes to come in. Okay? Thank you so much. The clerk will call the roll. There being 130 members present, the House is still in session. House third reading calendar number 46. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 324, Family Law, Child Support, Assignment of Rights.
House Bill number 324 is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 131 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes in the negative, House Bill number 324, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 718, Information Technology, State and Higher Education Email Requirements.
House Bill number 718 is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 132 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes in the negative, House Bill number 718, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 750, Criminal Law, Obstruction or Interference with Exercise of Religious Beliefs, Prohibition.
House Bill number 750 is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 132 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes in the negative, House Bill number 750, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 919, Maryland Higher Education Commission, Practical Applications of Real Estate Appraisal Grant Program established.
House Bill 919 is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 23 votes in the affirmative, there being 109 votes in the affirmative and 23 votes in the negative, House Bill number 919, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 953, Revenue Stabilization Account, Transfer of Funds, State Disaster Recovery Fund.
House Bill 953 is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative and 1 vote in the negative, House Bill number 953, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1005, Child Abuse and Neglect Reporting, Survivor Reporting Reform Act.
Recognizing the Chair of Judiciary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to reconsider the second reading of House Bill 1005.
The question before the House is to reconsider the second reading of House Bill 1005. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1005 is on second reading. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the chair of the judiciary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
The amendment
Amendment number 1.
I'm sorry. The amendment is, do you want me to read the number or you got it? Okay. The amendment changes or adds in the sponsor line after delegates the word permission to use the delegate's name.
Permission granted.
Forbes. Move the amendment, please.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Are you the gentleman from Western Maryland?
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Sure.
House Bill 953, one of these delegates bumped my arm, so I would like to go from nay to yay.
Let me just finish. Let me finish reading this 1 second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Okay. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. Why don't you go ahead and please stand up, the gentleman from Western Maryland, and make your statement
Thank you, Madam
again.
Speaker. You want to hear that twice?
Yes, I do.
Anyhow, my arm was bumped by a delegate here, and so I was recorded in the nay, and I'd like to switch 953 to yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other vote changes? Recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
My arm bumped my other arm, and I voted wrong on 953. I'd like to be recorded in the green. Thank
All
you,
right,
Madam
you have to control those arms. All right. Any other vote changes? House third reading calendar number 51. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1532, Utility Relief, Reducing Energy Load Inflation for Everyday Families Act.
House Bill number 1532 is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I'll try and be brief because I know we're late in the day. I think we have some really significant challenges facing us on that we're facing on the energy affordability front. The uncapped capacity prices from the July 2024 PJM auction are about to kick in. Also, PJM predicts, while we had a 230 megawatt per day peak load in 2025, that's going up to approximately 260 megawatt peak load in the coming year. And I think this summer is going to be really, really tough for us. So I wanted to take a minute and talk about some of the reasons I'm going to be a no today. And I really want to thank the committee, Environment and Transportation Committee, in helping me understand a lot of energy policy. I found it really, really interesting to learn about. One of the reasons I'm going to be a no today is because we really haven't tackled the way the regional greenhouse gas initiative really distorts our pricing and pushes up the bid for not only what are defined as fossil fuels, but all energy sources. And I think while what we need is more energy sources, I think this is likely to cause us to in the coming year, in the coming years, to see more plants say that there is no economic future for them and shut down prematurely. The minority leader actually had a really good amendment, and I will say I'm partially stand corrected by the floor leader. We're facing not an actual ban for new connects for gas, but it is actually an ipso facto ban for new connects to the market. If we, for water, we spread costs among ratepayers. For energy, we spread costs among ratepayers, and that's how we allow consumers to connect to the grid. But what we're doing in saying that new gas connections have to pay, everybody else who's been connected to gas, we're going to provide them an opportunity for lower rates. But for new people who want to have a more affordable source of energy, that they cannot have this lower cost, that is an ipso facto ban. And I think we're not only going to see fewer energy sources, but less options for consumers. I think one of the things we haven't talked enough about regarding this issue is that we've done nothing about protecting the private property rights of Marylanders who are likely going to see their property either confiscated or have some of their property rights taken due to transmission lines across a lot of northern Maryland. I think that's really sad and unfortunate. We've talked a lot about data centers for the last couple months, and I do think in the coming years, I think the mood is that everybody actually wants the data centers. And I think while we don't have projects constructed right now, we're likely to see that change radically in the coming years. A lot of people have said they want to see data centers provide their own power. This bill doesn't require that. So as we exit session here, we're going to have significant property tax subsidies that this body has provided for data centers, but no actual requirements that they actually provide their own power. In Southern Maryland, there's been a proposal, I understand, that they'd like to build a data center and take huge chunks of the nuclear energy that's provided there. And I can't help but to think we're going to see significant repercussions if that project moves forward, and we've done nothing to remediate that. We've also done nothing to make nuclear part of the conversation here. I had a discussion a few weeks ago with a member of the majority party, and he said, we should have tackled the nuclear issue 10 years ago when we were talking about it initially. We didn't do that. That was the right time to do that. But the next best time to make nuclear part of the equation is actually right now. And that might mess with the clean energy credits, but I don't think most people understand how that market works. We're actually subsidizing a lot of these projects from clean energy providers vis-a-vis that market. PJM came to the committee earlier in session and talked about the efficiency and effectiveness of the different energy sources. Nuclear is 95%. Fixed tilt solar is 7%. So if we had to add significant portions of nuclear to the energy market, and it knocked out some of the ratepayer subsidies for solar, I think that'd be a massive benefit to the ratepayer. And I don't think we should force the ratepayer to have completely unaffordable bills to subsidize products that are radically inefficient. So I have some real concerns as we exit this debate, and I think if session closed today and this were the work product, we'd have a really rough summer. I think ultimately, while the statute that governs energy policy is really complicated, we've done very little to actually add or make more efficient or address the way our statute really skyrockets rates for all ratepayers. And for those reasons, I'll be a no today.
Recognizing the gentleman from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to thank everybody, first of all, that worked so hard on this bill. So many people worked so hard on this bill, including and especially you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
Look, there's been a lot of conversation on the floor about how we have gotten into the kind of crisis that we're in right now when it comes to what folks are paying for electricity. And I've said this before, and I want to make sure I say it again so it's very, very clear. Those of you that have been on the Energy Committee and know that a vast majority of this has to do with data centers. Data center speculation, data center phantom load at the PJM level. It's kind of been a perfect storm in the last couple of years with the PJM queue, which is finally getting cleared now. But we have a lot of challenges. And I think it's right to say that some of the big challenges that we have, and it's been said multiple times, is supply and demand. So as we're going into a time where we need significantly more supply, because we have more perceived demand, some of it's real demand, some of it's not real demand, we're doing everything we can to create more generation, including nuclear. Right? We've talked about that multiple times on the floor. We created the ZEC program last year. We're doing everything we can to bring nuclear on as fast as we possibly can, as well as natural gas. These are all on the table. So for those folks that say that those aren't on the table, that's not accurate. These are all on the table. Some of the problem that we have, of course, is that this administration has made it very, very clear that they want natural gas. They want to pursue natural gas, and they want to revive coal. A lot of folks on this floor know that coal is not competitive for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons, which I don't think has been talked about on this floor yet, is because it's so dirty, it requires 5 to 6 times as many people to work at a coal plant as a natural gas plant. That's why coal, amongst many other reasons, is no longer viable. So when we have this supply and demand problem, and the current administration goes after solar incentives, storage incentives, which is the only thing that is available and deployable now. That's the only thing that's available and deployable right now. And the reason I say that is because as much as folks want to look at natural gas, and that we are looking into natural gas, and we're promoting the idea of bringing natural gas online, the fact of the matter is that's 5 to 6 years away. That's what those turbines are, in a couple of rare exceptions. If you want to look at nuclear, that's great. We're looking at that through ZEX, what we did last year on ECM, what we're doing this year. That's 9 to 12 years away in a perfect world. If all the permits go at the same time, which is very difficult, and it's very, very expensive. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It just means it takes a lot longer to get there. So what's available right now is solar and storage. That's what's available. So I think it's very important to just kind of set that as a fact base, because there's a lot of information that's thrown around that's not fact-based. So with that said, this bill does so many things to address so many of the issues that we can control on the state side, not necessarily the PJM issues that we can or can't control. We do what we can to address those as well. But just a few simple things. We limit the exorbitant pay for utilities. Significant adjustments to Empower, massive adjustments to Empower to save the ratepayer money. We adjust net metering. That is huge, adjusting net metering. Smart grid modernization through GETS and other technologies. Limiting the Drive Act, which was a very difficult one for me, but we had to do it because we have to save the ratepayer money where we can. Encouraging generation on brownfields, the RTO mandate, and the reverse auction. All of these things together will save the ratepayer a significant amount of money, and it's going to save the state a significant amount of money. And for all of those reasons, that's why I'm voting for this bill. That's why I would encourage you to vote for this bill. Thank you very much.
Recognizing the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I'm going to be agreeing on this bill, and I don't think it goes far enough. But anytime we can save people money today, I think that everybody has to take a long, hard look at this. And I wish a few of the amendments would have been accepted along the way with this bill. But, you know, if we can save anybody any money today, I really believe that that's how we all should be, and vote green on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognizing the gentleman from Cecil County.
I'm good, Madam Speaker. And, I did have one question. If the floor leader could just give us a brief, because I'm not on the committee, just a brief synopsis of what the bill does now as amended.
Okay, floor leader.
Go ahead.
All right, so what the bill does as amended, since you asked, is it saves a lot of money. And it does a lot of things. Doesn't do everything, doesn't solve every problem, doesn't do everything everybody had an idea for on a bill in this chamber. But we did take a lot of ideas that were presented by people in this chamber. People in both parties, people in many caucuses, people on the committee, people off the committee, and we tried to put it together in a bill. Some of you have a derogatory name for the bill. I like to call it the Voltron bill. It shows my age a little bit. But lots of little robots came together and made a great big robot warrior. And that is our policy here. We took a lot of really important but individual energy policies and put them all together into a bill that is going to lower people's rates, both in the short term and also in the medium and long term. And that's really important. So thank you for the opportunity for me to tell you about what the bill does as amended.
Madam Speaker.
All right, recognizing the delegate from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have toiled over this 1532. I live in an area that most of our schools are Title I. My seniors, I live in an aging area. My seniors are all fixed income. And like my colleague just said, if it can save a few dollars, it's a Big Mac or something. But anything is better than no. I used to say this, that a piece of pie is better than no pie at all, but I haven't ate pie lately. But I need to tell you that if we can save our seniors, and I'm looking out for my seniors in my area, that I'm going to be a yes on this.
Recognizing the lady from Hartford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just had a quick question that the chair of the committee piqued my interest, if he could answer. He mentioned that he had taken a bunch of suggestions from all kinds of folks, and I'm just wondering if there was a possibility he took a suggestion from a particular unofficial member of his committee, and there may be a QR code somewhere in here that we could talk about.
We did, Delegate. We
my.
had legislation from the seatmate of the Speaker and the Chair of Appropriations on transparency. And in that bill, we made some modifications based on some comments you made on the floor about how we could deliver that transparency more cheaply. And I think there may be a lot of partisan differences on this floor, but I think there's a bipartisan interest in the transparency provisions. And so we took your idea. I will say I think it needs a little bit of refinement in the Senate. I don't think we got the language exactly as you wanted it, but the spirit is there, and we were happy to take a constructive idea.
Well, I really appreciate it, even though I'm sure you probably could anticipate I wouldn't love the final product totally, that you still considered including things for those of us who would like a lot of transparency in the bill, because it is one of the complaints I get. People don't know why their bills are so high and what's really happening. So I hope that we'll be able to tweak it on the other side, even though I still will be a red vote, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Welcome.
We spent a lot of time on this bill in my committee and in my subcommittee, so I appreciate all the opportunity we had to learn about this issue and to continue learning about this issue. But I'm going to be a no for a couple reasons, two in particular. First of all, I'm deeply concerned with the third-party operator that we are setting up to operate the Empower program. We have a major, major problem in this state with nonprofits. Frankly, when you ask the comptroller, for instance, we can't even get a good number of what the state is giving out right now to nonprofits. You know, Washington, D.C. has a program like this where they've got a third-party operator, and they are trying to unwind it right now. They are trying to get out of their third-party operator because of the problems that they've had with that. I think that that is a major flaw inside of this legislation. But beyond that, I think we had a real missed opportunity to address transmission line issues. Now, we do some things with respect to transmission lines in this, but we had an opportunity to really get at the root of some of the issues that some of us in Baltimore County have and other parts of the state. I think we should have made regeneration of existing transmission lines a priority inside of this bill. That would have solved a big issue for many of us that are along the Brandon Shores power line path. But we didn't do that here. We continue down the same pathway of taking people's land, of exposing people unnecessarily to health risks. and exposing my district, frankly, to unnecessary risks with respect to forest fires and things like that. And so for those reasons, Madam Speaker, I'm going to be a no on this bill.
Recognizing the delegate from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There is a lot to like about this bill, and I like it. So I'm voting yes. But the specific thing I wanted to speak to, one of the things that I really appreciate about this bill, is the possibility of this move for Empower to a third-party administrator, a third-party manager for Empower. And here's why that's so important. Right now, each of our we want to get the best bang for our buck. We want an energy efficiency program where the money that's being collected is going to energy efficiency, because we know when we invest in energy efficiency, not only does it help the people who are receiving those rebates, but it also helps everyone, because the entire grid, we have to invest less in the entire grid because we're decreasing peak load based on Empower. So we know we want Empower. We know that we want Empower money to be spent as efficiently as possible. The problem is that right now, each of the utilities runs their own program. And so you have within the Exelon utilities, BG&E with a contractor who runs their program, and they pay an administrative fee to that. And Pepco with the exact same contractor who runs their program, and they pay administrative costs. And Delmarva Power with the exact same contractor who runs their program, and they pay administrative costs for their program. And so it doesn't make sense as a state to pay administrative costs over and over and over again when essentially the same program is getting run by a third-party contractor. So there are already third-party contractors running these programs. It's just that they're subcontracting one with each of the utilities. What this bill does is it envisions, we believe, that if one third-party contractor was running it for the state, that we would save significantly on administrative costs, and therefore all of those funds would be going to the program itself, to increasing efficiency. But, and so across this country, there's about 6 states that do it this way. The gentleman who just spoke found the one state where it's not working out. I'm happy to tell you the 5 other states it's working really well. And so recognizing that, and I will say in DC, the reason it doesn't have the savings is because there's only one utility. So there's one utility, and so whether that utility has its own contractor or there's a third-party contractor by itself, you're not going to see a difference. But in all the states where there's several utilities, having one third-party contractor running the program has saved money. But with the possibility that maybe it wouldn't save money because there's one state out of the 6 where it doesn't. What the bill actually does is it goes through a request for information process so we can find out, we can see whether the third-party contractor managing the program will save money. And when we see that it does, that is when the switch happens for Empower. So I just think this is one of so many well-thought-out aspects of this bill that really balances maintaining good, solid programs that are saving money in the long term while making sure we don't make rash decisions in the short term that possibly don't work out. And so, Madam Speaker, I want to thank the committee for doing this thoughtful work. Thank you for your leadership, and I'm excited to vote green on this bill.
Delegate from Baltimore County in the front.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support this bill because it makes improvements in many areas with respect to energy. Energy is as everyone knows, is a complicated issue. It's has many different aspects, and this bill, the reason for all the second reader debate and the length of the bill is because it makes improvements in a number of areas. And one of those is with respect to transmission and transmission lines. You know, with respect to new technology, transmission lines is one of those areas where there are many advancements in technology that can make the transmission of electrons much more efficient, and in the process reduce the cost for ratepayers. So what this bill does is it defines advanced transmission technologies as grid enhancing technologies, basically software improvements, high-performance conductors, or energy storage used in transmission. And what it does, it requires, moving forward, for CPCN, Certificate for Public Convenience and Necessity, applications for construction of a transmission line. Among a number of things, it requires that the applicant provide an analysis of how these advanced transmission technologies can be used and whether they will be cost-effective, which in many cases they will be, with respect to the provision of electricity along the transmission lines. But it doesn't, the bill doesn't just address the issue of CPCNs for new transmission lines. It also requires that each owner or operator of an existing transmission line report to the PSC every 4 years how it can use these alternative means of addressing transmission congestion through ATTs, advanced transmission technologies. So moving forward, the owners of existing transmission lines will also need to look at how these technologies can be incorporated into their existing lines and in the process reduce costs to ratepayers. And lastly, I want to mention that, again, in connection with changes to the process for transmission lines, the committee realized, in part because of a bill that the good delegate from Baltimore City introduced, that CPCNs for underground or even underwater transmission lines didn't require a CPCN from the Public Service Commission. That meant there was no approval process required at the state level. Thanks to this bill, there will now be, moving forward, to all transmission lines, regardless of whether they are above ground, underground, or underwater, there will be a PSC CPCN approval process. And lastly, and I just would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the Vice Chair of ECM for all of the work that she put in with respect to this issue of grid enhancing technologies, advanced transmission technologies. It has made a big difference and will make a big difference moving forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
It's like deja vu. 2010, there was a governor running for office, was riding around with a table on the back of his truck saying he was going to fix electric. Didn't happen. So we're here today talking about trying to fix cost of electricity. This goes nowhere near far enough. Talking to people in my district, business owners, homeowners, is so affected by the cost of this. People in my district are actually thinking, how are they going to buy medication? The cost of electricity has just skyrocketed so bad that given this bill did reduce some costs, and I will be voting green, even though it's a pittance, what I say a pittance, compared to what we're paying, I will be voting green. But getting back to my comment, back in 2010, there was a governor riding around saying he was going to fix the issues, and he didn't. I think he might have did something similar to this. I don't remember exactly. But we have a lot of work to do ahead of us. And one of the things that we do have now is portable, modular nuclear plants that we could utilize. And I hope that this body, or this body, will take a look at that. From what I understand, why, till this day, I'm still trying to figure out why I was on this seminar. They actually talked about the nuclear power plants being so small they could be moved with a tractor and trailer. They could put one in Baltimore City and supply the whole Baltimore City grid with electricity. This is technology that's new, it's safe, and we need to really look into it. I know it's going to take up to 10 years to build possibly a new nuclear power plant, but we have the technology, why not use it? Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I will be voting green.
You're welcome. Recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It has been such an honor to work on this bill, and to be very clear, the Utility Relief Act will lower bills for people. I'm so excited that this bill is ending up as a bipartisan bill because I think it speaks to the importance of what this bill does. And you've heard a lot about a lot of different parts of the bill, but I want to talk about probably my favorite part and one of the parts of the bill that I think is going to have the biggest impact on people in the long run. And there's a provision in this bill that gets rid of the use of forecast years as a method of alternative rate making at the Public Service Commission level. And we've learned a lot about energy this year, but in layman's terms, as to what that does is the use of a forecast test year allows utilities to go to the Public Service Commission and say, this is how much we want to spend. And it projects out into the future, and then the Public Service Commission uses that as a method for setting electricity rates across the state. We are preventing that in this bill, and instead what will happen is we will use historic data. And by using historic data, our electricity rates will be tied more on direct spending and not ever increasing costs that are consistently inflated by utilities. The use of a forecast year allows folks to consistently overproject, not focus on efficiencies, and this bill, by prohibiting that, will in the long run dramatically change our rate making process for the better. Again, thank you to the subcommittee chair, to the speaker, to the committee chair for the opportunity to work on this bill, and I implore the body to vote green on it. Thank you.
Recognizing the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to be a no on this bill, and I'll tell you why. Over the last several months, maybe the last year, I can't tell you how many calls, how many emails I got about energy bills. And in this body, we talk about health care sometimes. I challenge anyone to show me their monthly health bill anywhere near what they're paying for a utility right now. It's very difficult. And when I go back and I listen to people with this $150 they're going to so-called save on this bill, you know, when your electricity's shut off and you can't pay it, that $150 doesn't mean anything. The utilities and people you're paying, they'll still deny you and say, I'm sorry for your loss. You're shut off. So when you start putting it into perspective, and I do appreciate some money coming back and some savings, but it's really going to be difficult for me to go back and tell some of these people that I've known for years that, you know what, you're just going to have to suffer through this and kind of give up a whole lot more. And that whole lot more is going to turn into some things that we sit over here and we preach that we're going to do so well for a lot of people. Over the years, I sat on the Economic Matters Committee and I sat on energy, and we've talked about these types of bills and we've talked about these problems over and over and over again. And we're so late in the game and we're still doubling and tripling down on something that isn't working. Back in 2004, we decided we were going to get renewable, we were going to get clean energy. Since 2004 to today, we've been pushing this so-called solar, this renewable energy thing, and we can only do 8% of our energy. Something's failing here. The industry's failed us. We haven't given them a chance to improvise and get to there. If you want to look at your cars over the last couple of years, we've been able to expedite how we get gas mileage. But we're failing the people with this. We're failing people with this progress, with this thing we call a plan. And I just don't support it. And I think that in the long run, our rules and all our energy needs are going to change. And I hope we can adapt. Thank you.
Yes. The delegate from Ocean City. I'm sorry.
I love Ocean City.
From the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to rise and share my thoughts. I struggle watching a bill like this come through, and I mean it in the following way, because these were and they are real emails from constituents. These are citizens that are in my district, but they're family members, they're friends, and they're all talking about their energy bill. And so when I cast a no vote on this, it is with the hope that so many times through a deliberative bicameral process, that before it's all said and done, before Senate Die comes through, that perhaps this bill gets closer to where I think our state needs to be. Closer might be good enough for me to vote yes for it. And I mean this to say that anything that I know about economy and market comes down to supply and demand. And if you want to reduce the cost of something, the way to solve it is to create more supply. That's how you fix the problem in the long run here. And I'm not saying that we don't try to address at least some of that through this bill. My friend and colleague from Economic Matters Committee last year said, look, we're talking nuclear, we're talking natural gas, But he also readily admitted the only thing that our state can do right now is deploy solar and wind and battery technology. And so, as my prior friend said, that's only a very small percentage of the total amount of energy that we produce for our state, and we are not going to be, in the foreseeable future, be able to rely on solar and wind and battery to control our destiny when it comes to energy policy. And I'll just add to you, while our committee has lost energy, we've picked up housing. So what's the solution to housing? Availability and cost. The bills that we're going to pass out of our committee are aimed at increasing supply. We want more homes so we can lower the cost for those homes. That's market. That's economy. That's supply and demand. We lose that when we don't have an honest conversation about what we should have been doing for many years now, but surely what we should be talking about on the House floor today. Other states are doing it. Neighbors like Pennsylvania are doing it. We should be doing it, and we should be trying to solve some of these very simple to solve problems, which is we are a net importer of energy, which is going to be, guess what, expensive, guys. It's just going to be expensive. And so at the end of the day, remember this, out of all this, before it's all done, before Sunny Dye comes and goes, is that the Public Service Commission is a creation of this legislative body. They have been, for as long as I've been willing to remember as a policymaker, that entity who helps represent and control the prices for the benefit of our ratepayers. They have rate cases where these heavily regulated utilities, heavily regulated by the laws that we pass in this legislature, that Public Service Commission's job is to make sure that if a rate goes up, that it's done in a reasonable fashion that can be justified in a rate case. And while we rail against our utilities, while we with anger, and perhaps some of it self-righteous, but it's also righteous, frustration with where energy prices are today, think of it about how important it is that we take responsibility and a certain degree of ownership of where we sit here right now. And also, as humans, and this is a creation of a very human nature, we're all fallible, we all make mistakes. It took a long time for us to get where we are today. And while I'm a no on this bill at this moment, I do think that in the long run, I'd like to take on good faith my friend who was in the committee last year that's moved along, is right to say that supply and demand does matter, nuclear does matter and will be a future answer for our state, and that natural gas will be an answer. And maybe we don't get there this year, but I sure expect to be here for the next 4 years, and I'd like to have the honor of knowing that we are being serious about that particular subject because it matters to me. So, Madam Speaker, in closing, I struggle by voting no on this bill at this moment in time, but I will because at this moment in time, I'd like to see more done today in this legislative session, and I don't think we've done quite enough. Thank you very much for giving me a chance to talk on this bill, and I'm a no.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, and thank you for your comments. I think there are a lot of great things that we can clear up in some of that, hopefully, to make you more comfortable voting for the bill. I believe that this is, I like to call it the great, big, beautiful, powerful bill. This is an amazing piece of legislation, and one of the things that my colleague just mentioned was that this is a simple problem. It's not a simple problem. It's a difficult problem that we've been dealing with for so many years here in the state, but that other states around us are also dealing with. Talked about Maryland being a net importer of energy. Well, so are about half of the other states in the country, not just those in the Northeast. So are most of the states in the PJM. So this is not an issue that we can fix overnight or that we have complete ownership of. But in this bill, we're doing some really significant things. We've made choices in this bill to actually cut prices in the short term significantly. But I think what's more important in this legislation is what we are doing in the medium term and the long term. Those are the historic parts of this legislation. We want to increase competition for energy retailers in the state. You talked about more supply, and competition is one way to do that. And when you talk about the emails that you are all getting from your constituents, one of the email problems that I hear more and more and more about for the last 2 years are the problems created by the Senate Bill 1 back in 2024. Now, there were some great parts of that bill, and I will stand up and defend those as well. But there were some things that really did make it difficult for competition to survive in this state. And in this bill, along with a lot of other things, we solved that problem. We made reforms. We allowed them to make their rate cases in a different way than in Senate Bill 1. We allowed them to actually have longer contracts. And these are the things they asked us for. And so we did that to bring more competition and to give people more choices in this state. I think that's a really, really important part of this bill that's being overlooked. And I just want to also say that my colleague just said that you cannot rely on solar and wind and storage to meet our energy needs. And I would say that Texas would disagree with you. They 100% meet their energy needs with renewables. And we can get there, but we absolutely have to be committed to that. And it is true that we are open to so many different types of energy generation in this state, but it's also true that the ones we can access the cheapest and the quickest are those that we just mentioned, solar and storage. And that's why we are committed to investment in those. So, finally, I do want to say to my more conservative friends, I'm glad that we have some bipartisan support on this bill. I understand a conservative district more than a lot of my colleagues, say in Montgomery County, like my wonderful chair. Right? And I can tell you that there is no way that you're going to be able to spin a red vote on this bill because your constituents want to see action. And a red vote on this bill means that you are opting to do absolutely nothing for those constituents that are struggling to buy medicine or struggling to pay their rent. And I believe that to them that is unacceptable. So I invite you and urge you to join me in a green vote for this very, very important and impactful bill. Thank you.
Recognizing the delegate from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I'm glad to see that we're getting something moving on energy because it is the top issue that we are all hearing about. Just last week, a young mom with a family came up to me and said, "You have got to help." I live in a fairly modest 3-bedroom home, and my gas and electric bill was almost $700. I cannot afford it. I cannot go back to her and say, how does $12.50 a month sound? Because she is going to laugh at that. $12.50 a month, that's all we can do for her and her $700 bill. You know, there are a series of scheduled increases in people's utility bills. January 1, February 1, there's one in March. They expect spring bills to be elevated and then another bump in the summer. So when people go to turn their air conditioning on this summer when it's hot, they are going to see these astronomical bills once again. So we had a chance to deliver real savings for them because we know that the taxes and fees and environmental fees on people's gas and electric bills are between 28 and 30% a month. And this bill is giving them $12.50 a month. $12.50, it's probably 1%. It's just not enough. This is one more thing that is pushing our residents to other states. As other states, as people get their tax returns back and they see how much they're paying in state income taxes, they open their utility bill, we know what's going to happen. It is going to force seniors on a fixed income that cannot afford to continue to see these huge increases in their utility bills, their property taxes, and income taxes. And it's unfortunate, but they're going to leave. They're going to go to Delaware. They're going to go to Pennsylvania, which, by the way, is a huge exporter of energy, and that is a huge help to us. And they're going to go to Florida. So I wish this was more. I cannot go back to my residents with a straight face and tell them $12.50 a month was all we could do.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the delegate from Prince George's County, then the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, you will see a green vote on this board from me, and I think the majority of this body today, because we understand what the gentlelady from Baltimore County said, and that's we can't go home and have a red vote to show we did nothing. This bill is a compromise of many conversations and many ideas about how we move our state forward, how we get energy generation, how we reduce cost. To the gentlelady from Baltimore County on my other side that mentioned the $12.50 being laughable, I honestly don't think it is. Any percentage, any cent of savings is just that, savings for the ratepayer, savings for our constituents. And so I'm really grateful for the work that was done on this bill, and I look forward to the work that I know we're going to continue to do. Many on this floor have spoken about their desire to have nuclear. I join that club. We need to do more to make sure that we have every opportunity to generate as much energy as possible right here in our state. But this bill gets us moving forward. This inches us towards where we need to go. And I think any progress forward is progress worth having. And so that is why I'm really thankful for the committee's work. And you will see a green vote on this board from me, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
First, I actually would like to commend the Speaker, the sponsors of the bill, the committee. I do think you worked very hard and you produced an omnibus bill. We, for 60 days, said, where's the energy, where's the energy, where's the energy? And you did produce an extensive energy bill. But we also spent 2 hours today with 21 amendments that the Republican caucus put that are all good amendments, and every single one of those were rejected. I live on the Eastern Shore, and I see how solar is taking up fertile farmland throughout my area, my district. I also see in Ocean City the fight and the signs to keep the windmills off the coast and destroying the tourism of Ocean City. But I also saw something else this winter, and that's when we had that horrific snow and ice storm. And I saw solar panels that were covered with ice and snow. I can't imagine what windmills would look like off the ocean covered in ice and snow. I don't think there's ice and snow in Texas, but we certainly do have ice and snow here in Maryland. We also have a natural gas pipeline that goes all the way down to Crisfield. So while this bill has good intentions, it's not going far enough for me. And as my prior friend over here said, I certainly hope to see a better bill come out by the time we get to sine die, and I could change my vote, perhaps to green at that time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Prince George's County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I rise because when I first entered this body, I was always told that we have to find an area to become a subject matter expert. And I will not espouse to you that I have become a subject matter expert in the topic of energy for these past 50 days. But there's one thing that I have learned, and that's one thing that's common amongst all parties, and it's that our constituents care deeply about energy. Our office one day received about 40 calls, and all they cared about is, what are you going to do to lower my utility rates? And so, you all know I grew up in the black church. There's a saying that we had that said, take the meat and spit out the bones. And does this bill accomplish everything that everybody wanted? No, there were some ideas I had put forth too. But for the common good, we're holding data centers accountable to make sure they pay their fair share. We are in a sense, restoring competition and allowing those to be able to have choice in the market, all while still keeping consumer protections in place. But most importantly, I don't want us to minimize the power of $12, because $12 for a senior in my district, $12 for a senior in your district can go a long way. It can make the difference in insulin. It can make the difference in a mortgage payment and a rent payment. So how dare we say that $12 does not really do or accomplish anything? And so I am proud to cast a green vote for this bill, and I would urge all of you to do the same thing. Thank you.
The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
To explain my vote, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the lady from Harper County.
Thank you so much. I was really confused to hear that the justification for the way this bill has been drafted is the great state of Texas, where I hail from. Let me just make sure, like the gentleman over there that sits on the Health Committee had mentioned, Texas has somewhere between 4 days and 10 days of freezing temperatures. And I'll just remind the body, for those who don't know, Texas went through a real struggle recently when they had freezing temperatures because their grid was not prepared for it. And people actually lost their lives because of the policies that did not properly prioritize non-renewables that could handle cold temperatures. So I would caution anyone from considering Texas as a example for what kind of energy portfolio the state of Maryland should be going in the direction of. It would lead to a significant loss of life in our state. I'm still a red now and forever, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the delegate from Baltimore County to my left.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, to explain my vote, I'm green on this, number one, because I've lived in Michigan and I know that windmills can work in the cold, first of all. Second of all, I'll say I'm incredibly proud of this bill, and I'm incredibly proud of the work that my committee did. This bill is a result of hundreds of hours of work by this committee and our staff, and it possesses real solution and real savings. It focuses on real policies that lower costs, increase transparency, and plan responsibly for Maryland's energy future. And this is real policy making, and this is governing. Earlier in the session, during the second and third readers for HB1, we heard, this bill doesn't go far enough. Where's the bill? This bill doesn't go far enough. We need a bigger impact. Here we are. This is a bill that will have a big impact, and it will be felt immediately. We're talking about $500 million in savings over the next 2 years. And in the medium and long terms, it also reforms utility rate-making practices so customers aren't paying for costs that never materialize. It continues to insulate us from further future massive hikes. It increases transparency so people can finally understand why their utility bills keep going up. And importantly, addresses a growing challenge that we cannot ignore, the rapid expansion of data centers. Data centers can bring jobs and economic opportunity, but they also bring enormous electricity demand. And this bill ensures that as those facilities develop, we have the visibility, planning, and guardrails necessary to ensure that residential ratepayers are not left footing the bill for massive new infrastructure. So when we go back to our districts and constituents ask us a very simple question, did you do anything to lower our electricity bills? I will be able to say yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Southern Maryland, then Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To explain my red vote, I heard a lot about data centers in the last few days, sucking up all this power and really being the boogeyman to be blamed. Here's a newsflash. Maryland doesn't have a lot of data centers. Do you know who does? Virginia. Virginia has a ton of data centers. Did you know like 85% of all internet traffic goes through the state of Virginia? Now, I'll point you to the comptroller's report this year on housing, because housing is a really big deal. And in that report, the one data point that really struck me was the average cost of a house in Virginia is $20,000 more than in Maryland. But yet the cost of ownership of the house in Maryland is $240 more per month. Why? State taxes, local taxes, and our energy bills. We have the highest utility bills in the nation. Last month, my electric bill was $1,000. You pay way more taxes and hidden fees in your electric bill than anyone knows. Depending on your utility company, it's about 27 or 30%. That would be $300 a month to the state government or some other entity. This bill gives me $12.50 back of my own money. That doesn't go far enough. Hopefully this red vote will inspire the Senate to at least eliminate the Empower fee, which I think would be good for everyone. I do appreciate the majority party eliminating the Empower fee for the gas customers. That's a step in the right direction, but we'd really like to see it eliminated for everyone. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Recognizing the delegate from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To explain my vote, there's so many good things in this bill. I want to focus, though, on the transmission line issue because I did get to work on it. And I'm so grateful that the committee took it up and then improved substantially on the issue. I just want to, we're talking about affordability. The transmission projects, the supplemental transmission projects, represent billions of dollars in spending, over $2 billion estimated. And they are currently largely unreviewable in the state. It is a huge deal that we are bringing those projects under the review authority through the CPCN process with important safeguards and important restrictions so that we as Marylanders through our PSC can actually review the cost effectiveness, whether it's the best technology and whether it's actually necessary. And I was proud that there was bipartisan support for that aspect. And I'm just very excited and proud to be voting green for this bill. Thank you.
Recognizing the very patient gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I'm going to be a red vote. I'm voting red on this bill tonight because I believe Marylanders deserve more than just promises for power. PJM has actually been very accurate over the past several years about their projections for energy consumption. The only cases where they've been incorrect is that the demand has actually come faster than they've projected in their public communications. The affordability issue isn't just about power, it's about everything. And the middle class folks in my district feel like they're completely being routed right now. Overwhelmingly, our problems with energy rates in this state are due to the extremist energy mandates that are driving up the cost of energy, shutting down our base load, forcing us to build these new transmission lines. And that is the underlying cause of this problem. They are destroying the market, distorting the market, and destroying our current energy capacity. I don't actually have to spin this no vote, because if I went to the average ratepayer in Dundalk, Edgemere, Essex, Fort Howard, Middle River, or Rosedale, and if I said to that person, I have conviction that this bill does not provide relief, what should I do? The average person from my district would say, vote no. And I do have conviction that this bill will not provide relief. I have great fears that Mother Nature is probably going to unleash hell on the average ratepayer this summer, and for that reason, I'll be a no.
Recognizing the delegate from Howard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To explain my vote, I am very proud to be voting green on this bill. There's been so much work done by this committee. What I really love about this bill is the degree of balance that is in it. If you just look at the Empower changes that we're making, that is $500 million of savings right away. And there are people on the left who think that we went too far in changing Empower. But I think we're responding both to the need for people to have lower electric bills. They are terrible, there's no question about that, but we're also not cutting our noses off to spite our face. We are saving what is good about Empower, and we have a chance to build it back up. So all through this bill, there are short-term, medium-term, and long-term savings, and also opportunities for more generation on the grid to increase supply. And the rate, the multi-year rate, I'm sorry, I'm losing my mind here. The the multi-year rate changes for utilities, I think, is something that's going to have a very powerful effect over time, but we're not going to see it in 5 minutes. But this bill truly is going to change so much about our energy, and I am very proud to be a green vote. Thanks so much.
Recognizing the gentleman from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I am a no vote on House Bill 1532, the so-called Utility Relief Act. And here's why. When I talk to my constituents in Calvert County and tell them that Annapolis has added 30% to their electricity bill in the form of taxes, the first thing they say is, well, it should be pretty easy then to reduce electricity bills, just get rid of the taxes. But instead, the Utility Relief Act is basically providing a few dollars a month back to utility payers rather than just giving them back all of the taxes that Annapolis is collecting, some 30% of your electricity bill. It's kind of like getting carjacked and the carjacker takes your car, steals it, and then gets the spare tire and hands it to you and says, here, hope that works out. That's why this bill is so insulting. So please don't tell me or the Republican caucus that we need to spin this to our constituents. My constituents are smart. They know who has caused the electricity crisis in this state, and it is the majority party. They know this bill isn't solving the problem. You worked on it hard, I agree with that, but it isn't solving the problem. There are too many interests in this body that come to it and lobby that still want all of the different subsidies that this body provides to them. And we know that. We know that the party is captured by those interests, which is why nothing ever changes. But let's make this very clear. My constituents want the 30% off of their bill. So do yours. So do yours. I'm happy to have that debate in your district if you ever want to have it, because I don't need to spin it.
Your time is up,
Thank
gentlemen.
you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Explain my vote, my green vote here. With all due respect, nobody said we're solving the problem here. What we said is we're going to reduce your energy bills by at least $150 a year. And it's by at least. There are a number of other provisions in there. It is by at least $150. If you happen to be a low-income Marylander, the savings might actually be quite a bit more substantial, as there are millions of dollars in existing law and in this bill being funneled to low-income energy assistance. Those are the facts. Now, as to the lengthy history of energy policy you heard here, I do want to respond to one comment that was we rejected all sorts of good amendments. All of them were good, in fact, was the claim I heard, but we had conflicting amendments from the minority party. Some were for all of the above energy generation. Some were trying to shut down energy generation that they did not like. Wind power, transmission lines, what have you. And this is a very similar policy coming from the White House that has decided they are against woke energy, and they are taking offline planned energy generation in Maryland that has billions of dollars of investment behind it. Those are the facts. I don't say this to make an excuse. I say this to show how even in this debate, the energy discussion is complicated. I happened to speak after the Constellation CEO at an event this summer, and it was actually, I was surprised, he actually suggested that Maryland could get by with battery storage, renewables in the short term as we fashion a long-term solution. But remember, 10, 15 years ago when we were looking at this issue, the Fukushima disaster was fresh in mind, 2011. That's not that long ago. Cars were becoming more efficient, and the data center boom was not here. Those are the facts on the ground. So we are doing what we can to save our constituents a few bucks. This is a good bill.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing, 1 second, the gentleman from Anne Arundel to my left has been waiting for a while.
Thank you.
And then I'll come back to you, okay? Thank you for being patient.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
My
I know
pleasure.
sometimes back in the back row back here, we get sometimes missed. And
No, I don't miss you. I just try to be balanced.
I'm not as tall as my counterpart here from St. Mary's, so.
We see you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
And I'm standing up to explain my green vote. I know this bill does something. It does a little bit that's going to help our constituents. Now, when we look at the title of the bill, it's in capital letters, relief. This should really be in lowercase because it does a little bit. It does not go far enough, but I'm proud to bring something back to the district. I'm proud to bring some relief back to my district. I voted green tonight. I voted green on the 21 amendments this morning. Thank you for the time, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the delegate from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just want to say that the reason I voted no on this bill, and believe me, I am almost an adopted member of ENT at this point. I am in there so often, and I know that they actually looked at some of my work and they said maybe we can work some of this in, and I've had my opportunity to make my case, and I know they worked hard, and I appreciate this, appreciate that. But I'll be honest with you, all you really had to do was take my suggestion. You didn't have to work. All you had to do was repeal the Climate Solutions Now Act, repeal SB 1, repeal Reggie, repeal Empower, and then repeal all of the taxes. Repeal's easy. We would have saved every ratepayer in the state 30 to 40 to 50%, and you wouldn't have had to work that hard. Maybe next year, when we're trying to solve this problem again, we just stop working so hard at being prescriptive, let the free market go to work, and repeal all the problems we've put in place of the free market. I know that the Trump administration was just mentioned. All they did was say, we're going to stop putting our hand on the scale of certain things and let the free market go to work. Stop subsidizing what some people like and don't like. I don't like any subsidies either. Let the free market go to work. Let's get out of the way, and I promise you the ratepayers will love us for it.
Recognizing the gentleman from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, to explain my green vote. Colleagues, it was difficult to pass the torch when it came to energy because when I spoke with the chair, I said, you know, learning energy is the easy part. Figuring out what to do next is the difficult part. And it was a Herculean task to try to get this body in the state to even look towards nuclear. To even open up the thought that natural gas may be a possibility. And I was honestly terrified that that was going to change. We were going to reverse course because, but we didn't. And we've kept the options open. And one of the things that I planned poorly for, honestly, is I just knew the one thing that was going to happen was as soon as this new administration took over, there was going to be a plethora of money out for nuclear. And they were going to assist us in our plans. That did not happen. That doesn't mean it won't. But what I do appreciate about this bill is it's forward-looking because we can't just panic. And we did something. That's the hard part, is trying to figure out that exact quotient that's going to make this work. But we can't abandon everything that we've created because the administration is turning itself to coal or oil. Because when that administration is gone, we'll be back on track. And I know we'll be back here again next year. You're not incorrect about that. Trying to find additional solutions because that's what we do. But the fact is, doing something is better than doing nothing at all. And I know it's a lot easier to point out the shortcomings in this bill, but I will say that I'm glad and I appreciate the hard work that the committee has done to pick this up and continue the movement that we need to do, which is opening this up for everything, for everybody. Thank you very much.
All right. I would like to say a few words. I want to thank the committee for their hard work. They had countless meetings, and so did I, with all the parties. And I can tell you that both parties on both sides are not happy. That's how you can tell that a bill is good. I'm very proud of their work. And I want to correct the record. It is not just $150. That's only Empower alone. That is the minimum in savings. When you add the multi-year rate changes, the NEM changes, the reverse auction for new generation, 20 million in savings requiring utilities to join PJM instead of paying them to be in PJM. And when you actually look at the centralized administration where they're shifting to a single centralized and power administrator that would eliminate redundant administrative expenses, when you look at the fact that the bill addresses the large data center cost, and I would like people at home to go to the fiscal note. Go to the fiscal note and look at page 12 of the fiscal note. The last paragraph there tells you that this bill will save money now and it will save money in the future. It is an impressive fiscal note. And for that, this bill is worth voting for because you can go home and say you did more. This is immediate, but it's also the future. The clerk will call the roll. The clerk will take the call. There being 108 votes in the affirmative and 25 votes in the negative, House Bill number 1532, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. That ends the work at the desk. Committee announcements, appropriations,
Will not meet tonight, Madam Speaker.
economic matters,
Economic Matters will not be meeting this evening.
environment and transportation,
The House Environment and Transportation Committee will meet tomorrow.
government, labor, and elections,
Lee will meet tomorrow.
health,
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Health Committee will be meeting tomorrow.
judiciary,
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Judiciary will be meeting tomorrow.
ways and means,
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Ways and Means Committee will not be meeting tonight.
subcommittee announcements, delegation announcements, caucus delegation announcement. Howard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Howard County delegation will not be meeting tomorrow.
Women's caucus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Permission to use the delegates' names?
Permission granted.
Thank you so much. I'd like to highlight the work of the members of the nominating committee for the Women's Caucus. They have completed their process. And let me first shout out and thank the nominating chair, Delegate Edith Patterson, along with the rest of the nominating committee, Delegate Pasteur, Delegate Ziegler, Delegate Lehman, Delegate Turner, and Delegate Taveras. The results are in, and if we could have these amazing women stand. Yeah, right, yeah, sure, let's do that. This new executive board will start the day after sine die, and they are members at large, Delegate Jackie Addison and Delegate Elizabeth Embry. Stand up. Treasurer, Delegate Linda Foley. Secretary, Delegate Kathy Forbes. Second Vice President, Delegate Kim Taylor. First Vice President, Delegate Denise Roberts. And President, Delegate Stephanie Smith.
Congratulations to all. You're welcome. Any other caucus announcements? All right. Seeing none, personal or guest announcements. Go ahead.
Just a vote change.
You're putting yourself at risk.
Vote change 919 to no.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Okay. Anyone in the back? All right. Has everyone recorded their presence? The clerk would take the call. There being 132 members present, the House is still in session, recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stands adjourned until Wednesday, March 18th at 10 o'clock a.m., legislative date March 4th.
Thank you, everyone, for your work today. Please get some rest.